Before Batman became the grim figure we know today, he fought crime with a sidekick who sniffed out crooks and chewed through ropes, a loyal German shepherd in a cowl. Ace, the Bat-Hound, was every bit as absurd as he was endearing, a crime-solving dog who foiled death traps and even wore a mask so no one could connect him to Bruce Wayne. In many ways, he was the ultimate example of how gloriously silly Batman comics could get in the 1950s, a living plot device who always showed up at just the right moment. He was undeniably fun, but Ace also embodied everything DC would eventually cast aside in an attempt to make their heroes more realistic. So it's almost poetic that decades later, when Batman was reimagined for a cyberpunk future in Batman Beyond, Ace returned. This Ace wasn't a crime-fighting mascot, he was an abused stray who found a home with an older, lonelier Bruce Wayne. No cape, no cowl, just loyalty, trauma, and a bond forged in shared pain. In a world where Batman had pushed away everyone who ever cared for him, Ace became his last true companion. But before I get to that, I think it's important to look back at the comic book source material. Ace the Bat-Hound first appeared in Batman number 92, published in 1955. He originally belonged to John Wilker, a skilled etcher who was kidnapped by a criminal gang who were going to force him to forge bonds. When Ace tried to intervene, they knocked him unconscious and dumped him into a river. Fortunately, Batman and Robin were nearby and were able to rescue him. Ever the responsible citizen, Bruce Wayne placed a notice in the paper asking the dog's owner to come forward. While they had only been together for a short time, Ace became quite attached to Batman and Robin and followed them on their adventures. However, as Ace's picture had been published in the paper and he had a distinctive star mark on his forehead, Batman worried that people would deduce that Bruce Wayne was Batman if they saw him in the company of Ace. So Robin fashioned a cowl for him to mask his identity. In public, the dynamic duo only referred to him as the Bat-Hound, showing respect for his secret identity. The Bat-Hound led Batman and Robin to the gang that had kidnapped Wilker, and they resumed their normal lives. While he had returned to his civilian life, Ace was always ready to support Batman if he was ever needed. Sometimes he was pure deus ex machina, turning up out of nowhere to save Batman and Robin from Catman's death traps. Other times he was conveniently brought in for dog-themed cases, like tracking down a criminal using specially trained canines to rob factories. Eventually, Wilker relocated to another country for his job and asked Bruce Wayne to look after Ace. By the mid-1960s, however, the Bat-Hound had fallen out of favour with DC and quietly faded into obscurity. After Crisis on Infinite Earths in the mid-1980s, the Bat-Hound was erased entirely. He was deemed too goofy for DC's new, grim, gritty, grounded direction. However, a new dog named Ace eventually showed up in 1991. This version of Ace was a bloodhound who served as a guide dog for a blind elderly Native American shaman named Black Wolf. When Black Wolf passed away, Batman took Ace in, and he lived in the Batcave alongside Batman's engineer Harold. Ace was a loyal and strong dog who sometimes accompanied Batman on cases when he needed to track people. What better tracker is there than a bloodhound, right? But again, he had a small role and really was more Harold's dog than anything else. And that brings us to Batman the Animated Series, which debuted in 1992. Ace did not appear in that show, although there was a time when a Bat-Hound was a very real possibility. I've talked about the show's rocky beginning several times in other videos, but the quick and dirty summary is that producers Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski faced some pushback from studio executives who were concerned that their show may not appeal to a large enough audience. As a compromise, they hired story editor Sean Catherine Derrick to help with the scripts. She had a long career in animation, working on shows like The Smurfs and Captain Planet, and her vision for Batman clashed hard with Timm and Radomski's darker, stylized approach. Now, that's not to say that she was wrong, it's more that she had been instructed to bring the pair down to earth and produce a more commercially viable show that would appeal to a younger audience. She was also very keen on working social issues into her stories, which caused some eye rolls. For example, she suggested Batman should keep a recycling bin in the Batcave. And one of her other suggestions was that Batman should have a dog. Thinking back to the Silver Age Ace the Bat-Hound, Timm and Radomski ridiculed her, dismissing the idea as nonsense and something that they would never even consider doing. Which makes it all the more ironic when Bruce Timm and company developed Batman Beyond, and they gave the elderly Bruce Wayne a dog named Ace. Now, as you might expect, this Ace was far more grounded. He didn't wear a cape and cowl. He was a mix of a Great Dane and a Doberman, fiercely protective of the elderly Batman. By this point in his life, Batman had alienated everyone, and Ace was his only companion. Ace initially didn't really care much for the new Batman, Terry McGinnis, but over time the two grew to form a bond. When Batman needed help against tough foes like Shriek or Chimera, it was Ace that helped him out. Ace was fiercely brave, leaping to defend both Batmen without hesitation, and when he failed, he genuinely seemed ashamed, as if he'd let them down. Take for instance when he failed to protect the elder Batman from the Joker. Ace sulked on the sofa watching cartoons. Yes, he was also wounded in the attack, but he was upset that he wasn't able to fend off the Joker. And this fighting spirit was instilled in Ace from a very young age. As a puppy, he had been sold to Ronnie Boxer, who participated in an illegal dogfighting ring. Ace had been identified as a potential fighter despite his youth, thanks to his large paws. Boxer immediately began brutal training, beating Ace with a newspaper and shocking him with an electro glove to provoke aggression. He was a soft, adorable little puppy, but to Boxer he was a potential asset, something he could mould and profit from. Fortunately, Ace was able to escape before his first fight began after a timely intervention from the police. In the chaos, Ace escaped and wandered the streets aimlessly. It was on his travels that he came across the elderly Batman who was ambushed by a Joker while trying to lay roses at the site of his parents' death, as he had done every year since they were murdered. Without hesitation, Ace intervened, attacking the Joker, but he was injured in the process. At this point, Batman brought him home, as he had done with so many other wounded strays, human or otherwise. One thing that I find really interesting is the dog's name. Batman is the one that named him Ace, not Boxer. And when you look at Batman's adventures over the years, it's abundantly clear that Batman named his new dog after the powerful psychic Ace of the Royal Flush Gang. They never said this in Batman Beyond, mostly because they hadn't made Justice League yet, which is where Ace debuted, but there is an unmistakable connection between this dog and the girl thanks to the Justice League Unlimited episode Epilogue. While the main story takes place in the Batman Beyond era, where Terry McGinnis meets with Amanda Waller to discuss his frustrations with the elder Batman, Waller tells a story from the Justice League era about how Batman saved the world from an out-of-control Ace. Her powers had grown immensely. She could now warp reality and change the world around her in any way she saw fit. But this upgrade had a price. It was going to cause an aneurysm, which would have caused a psychic backlash so severe that it would have caused countless casualties. Waller had prepared a device that could be used to euthanize Ace, and Batman took it upon himself to administer it. However, he had no intention of killing her, and Ace knew it. She could read his mind and knew what would happen if she didn't undo everything now, so instead of battling it out, Ace instead asked for Batman to stay with her and keep her company, because she was afraid. Batman took her hand and sat with her until she peacefully passed away. This is arguably one of the most emotionally impactful scenes in Batman media and perfectly highlights this version of Batman's compassion and his heart. This event clearly left its mark upon him because even decades later, when the time came to name a loyal, trustworthy companion, an orphan stray no less, Batman chose the name Ace. The two Aces have something in common. They were both turned into weapons. Ace, the girl, was taken by the government and experimented on, while Ace, the dog, was trained to become a ruthless fighter. I like to think that Batman recognized that same quality in Ace the dog, and that's why he forged the connection in his mind. Years later, Ace randomly came across Boxer in the street, and he immediately recognized his tormentor and felt like it was time for some restorative justice. Ace ignored Terry's commands and pursued Boxer, and the two ended up getting separated. While Ace wandered the streets following Boxer's scent, eventually he was captured and taken back to the dogfighting ring, which had gone through something of an upgrade. Instead of having normal dogs fighting, Boxer dealt with genetically enhanced dogs, grotesque, hulking brutes bred only for violence. When Batman tracked down Boxer, one of the dogs was set upon him. The key thing to remember here is that this mutant dog was as much of a victim of Boxer as Ace was, if not more so. Its physical form had been transformed against its will, and the only purpose it served was to entertain sickos that liked to watch animals tear each other apart. While the mutant dog was more interested in chewing up Batman, Ace broke free and was able to get a measure of revenge on Boxer, before helping Batman overcome the colossal canine. By the episode's end, Ace was back at Bruce's side, and for once in their harsh world, everything felt right. Ace's journey mirrors Batman's own. Once a goofy Silver Age relic, he became a tragic, deeply resonant figure, much like the Dark Knight himself. Both he and Bruce were weapons shaped by cruelty, but neither was defined by it. Batman gave Ace a home, and in return, Ace reminded Bruce Wayne that compassion still mattered and that, even after decades of loss, trust and love weren't impossible. And maybe that's why the name Ace carries so much weight. Bruce didn't name him after a playing card, he named him for the psychic girl he once held as she died, because he saw the same thing in them both. Children stolen from their families, turned into weapons, each worthy of something kinder. In the end, Ace is more than just Batman's dog. He's Batman's reminder of who he is at his core, a man who takes in strays, whether they wear domino masks, bend reality, or simply need someone to sit with them until the pain stops. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my channel members. Everyone who was a member at the time of this video's creation is listed on the screen right now. If you want to see your name amongst all these wonderful people, join the channel now. Next time, I'll be back on Monday to talk about a very memorable episode of Superman the Animated Series that explored the possibilities of a world where the Man of Steel tightened his grip on humanity following the death of a loved one. We're going to talk about Brave New Metropolis. And next Friday it's time to talk about an unexpected guest star in Batman the Animated Series. She is the Mistress of Magic, the Princess of Prestidigitation, Zatanna Zatara. Hope to see you then.